Good morning, everyone. So welcome to Stanford Neurodiversity Summit. Some of you may have participated all along in the summit. For those of you who just joined, welcome. We would like to let you know that all sessions are recorded and transcribed. Please check our summit website for YouTube videos. All questions from the audience will be submitted through the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. The moderators will try to cover as many questions as possible. For today's session, Doug Meeker will conduct the Q&A. Doug is the founder and CEO of Live Sherpa, an assistive technology platform focused on neurodiversity workforce development. We're very happy to have him with us. Welcome to our Small Businesses Big Impact session. Our objective is to empower small businesses owners and managers on initiating neurodiversity at work initiative in their companies. Today, we'll have speakers representing their organization that help individuals to find meaningful employment and among other programs. Now, I'm very happy to introduce Dr. Lawrence Fung. Dr. Fung is a scientist and psychiatrist specialized in autism spectrum disorder and is the director of Stanford Neurodiversity Project.
Thank you, Mark, for the kind introduction. The objectives of this part of the conference is to really empower small businesses and managers on initiating neurodiversity at work initiative. And we want to provide them tools to enhance business owners, and so they would bring something out after this session. This is our lineup for today. In the next hour, we'll have a lot of information. So it's going to be 10 minutes per presentation. And hopefully you can get some tools in your back pocket after this hour. In this conference, on the first day, Dr. Hala Anabi already talked about the Autism at Work Employer Roundtable. And as you can see, there are a lot of the names that you can recognize. So those are the large companies. There may be some companies that you are not aware of. So those are probably the small to medium-sized companies. So when you're looking at the breakdown for neurodiversity initiatives, a lot of the time you really remember the large companies such as JP Morgan Chase, Microsoft, SAP, DXC Technology, and EY, and they actually will be speaking this afternoon. They have done really tremendous, and we would really want them to continue to scale up their neurodiversity at work initiative. The small to medium-sized companies, there are really a handful. As you can see, there are only 15 that I can name instead of the 22 large corporations. So now, why are we talking about small to medium-sized companies? Because the small to medium-sized companies actually made up the larger part of the workforce in the United States. For the companies that are mid-sized, that is between 100 to about 2,500, and the small companies with fewer than 100 people, that make up more than 60% of the workforce in the United States. So when you're thinking about having the neurodiversity at work initiatives, and we are actually needing to help about 5.4 million people that are on the autism spectrum to get work. And the large companies so far, collectively, they have got probably a couple of thousand. So we have basically 3 orders of magnitude difference between the demand and the supply. So in order to actually increase the scale, we have to think about not only the large companies. The small to medium-sized companies, if anything, they should do a lot more. In fact, really many orders of magnitude of the effort that we need from them. Small business can have big impact they actually employ 57 million Americans. And as you can see from the last slide, 60% of our total workforce. And there is a lot of good new jobs that are actually coming from the small businesses as well. So why are we, again, inviting small to medium-sized companies to join the neurodiversity movement? Because just like what I said, they represent 60% of the workforce. And also they are more agile than large businesses. A lot of the time, they don't really have their human resources department. The owner of the company can take the initiative and then just make things happen. Large companies, a lot of the time, after planning, there are many hurdles that they need to overcome in order to actually get neurodiversity at work program really working. And also think about people on the spectrum. For example, apprentice model or apprenticeship model can work really, really well for them. And it can also work really, really well in small businesses, because there are a lot of the time the company are only having small teams, and one-on-one supervision and small teams are actually best for neurodiverse individuals. So this translate, why is that? Why is it better? Because small teams can translate to less complex hidden curriculum. So this is all good. We are selling to everyone that small to medium-sized businesses should involve. And right now, really, the COVID is not helping. The impact of COVID have been really causing a lot of the small businesses to actually close their doors, according to this very recent paper in Proceedings of National Association of National Academy of Sciences. So when we are looking at the number of responses, there are about 4,000 responses from small, medium-sized companies. And when they are looking at the likelihood of remaining open by December of 2020, and this question was asked in April, there are some of them that are thinking about they would not be able to continue to open. And especially for those that have little cash, so the orange would be, the months of cash would be larger, so that definitely they are more able to sustain. But the ones that have little cash flow, they may not be able to sustain, as you can see. So we acknowledge that this is really tough time. But why would small businesses still want to be involved in the Neurodiversity at Work initiative, even during the pandemic? Because neurodiversity is a competitive advantage. As a lot of us have been talking about, there's so much that neurodiverse individual can bring to the table. And embracing neurodiversity is just the right thing to do. And most people know someone who is neurodiverse. Neurodiversity at Work initiatives can be synergistic with the financial model of small businesses when you actually know what to do. So a lot of what the other speakers are going to talk about would be the nuts and bolts on what can be done. And this, I will encourage the speakers to also point out how that is relevant in light of pandemic as well. So one example of that is tax benefit. So this is a federal benefit for businesses who have employees with disabilities. So this is called Work Opportunity Tax Credit, and it can be up to $9,600 per employee for the tax benefit. And there's really little paperwork. There's no limit for the number of individuals an employee can hire. So this is almost $10,000. If your company has 10, that means it's $100,000 tax credit. So for small companies, this actually makes a big difference. So other benefits that other speakers will talk about would be the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act funds. And on Tuesday, tomorrow at 1, there's also another session on paid internship programs. This program is very important because the business owners only need to provide the training to the interns and provide the opportunities. And the regional center actually pay the interns. The owners don't even have to pay the interns. So the last couple of minutes, I'm going to just impose on you on the ecosystem model of neurodiversity initiative. When we are talking about neurodiverse individual, it's not really just the neurodiverse individual that we are trying to support. We need to recognize that there are a lot of players involved. Family, friends, mentors, therapists. In the educational system, there are a whole bunch of people, the teachers, the school officials, and so forth. And the employment setting, similarly, the supervisors, the colleagues, and so forth. So in our Stanford Neurodiversity project, we have various different programs that are targeting different parts of the ecosystem. So the Neurodiverse Students Support Program is mainly on the education setting. The Neurodiversity at Work program is more on the employment setting. This Stanford Neurodiverse Candidate Registry is focusing on the neurodiverse individual. The job bank is focusing on getting the jobs. And the special interest group is actually for everyone. Neurodiversity courses at Stanford is primarily focusing on the Stanford students. And there is also a high school camp for the high school students. And we just launched this network for K-12 neurodiversity education and advocacy. And this is for the K-12 level, not only for the students, we also welcome the teachers and the families. And for neurodiversity awareness program, basically, we are just talking to different targeted individuals. And basically, when you're thinking about the neurodiversity initiatives, the first thing is you have to ask, where are you in the ecosystem? Who are you? And what are you doing to help with the neurodiversity initiative? If you're wanting to explore how you want to contribute to the scale up the neurodiversity at work initiative, please send us an email. You may already be signing up to some of our initiatives, but if you are wanting to do something novel, let us know. We may be able to help. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Fang. In order to move forward and make sure that everyone will have a chance to have Q&A, we'll just keep going with to the next speaker. 1 second. Now, I would like to welcome Stephanie Dignam. She is the Employment Service Manager for the Pomeroy Center in San Francisco. Take it away, Stephanie.
Sorry, I was muted. I was just thanking everybody and saying that I'm here today to talk a little bit about how to use employment services and/or regional center funded paid internships to create low-risk partnerships that will increase inclusion and create a more nuanced understanding of workplace accommodations and supports. As an employer or potential intern, if you choose to engage with an employment services provider to implement a regional center funded paid internship program, you will be able to access the following on and off job services provided by trained professionals. Interns can benefit from on-the-job training. An employment services specialist will be available to assist an intern with understanding and navigating tasks, responsibilities, and relationship building. This level of support will decrease as needed throughout the internship. Some employment services programs are also available to provide things like group classes, travel training, hard and soft skills training, offsite away from the traditional workplace. Employers will benefit from having a trained inclusion and support professional coming in and assisting with setting up accommodations for interns and increasing knowledge and language that is inclusive. Increasing inclusion in the workplace allows people the opportunity to feel as though they can be their authentic selves, be supported as needed, and still allow them the opportunity to be successful. Some employment services providers will also take the time to provide training to employers around accommodations and inclusion in general. That way, employers that may not have a well-developed inclusion plan can begin to have that conversation and implement as needed. Both interns and employees can benefit from long-term services if the intern becomes a permanent hire. When a regional center client becomes a permanent employee, they are then able to access long-term employment services like the ones mentioned above. These services are not meant to be a replacement for traditional on-the-job training, and most providers are not positioned to stay on the job with clients 100% of the time. The goal of long-term supports is to provide minimal interventions and be available for any issues that may arise as needed. So in the field, PIP refers to the paid internship program funded by regional centers. These internships provide real work experience for interns. For employers, PIP is an opportunity to gain an intern that has access to on and off the job training as needed. Employment services and PIP exist at no cost to employers or interns. This is a resource that can be utilized at any time by both employers and interns in order to create a more functional and inclusive workplace, gain relevant skills, and/or open up employment opportunities at your company. Some interns or employees would rather have employment services provided solely offsite or possibly virtually. These types of plans can be discussed. There is no one-size-fits-all solution for employment services. The goal is to create an individualized service plan that supports the needs of the intern and the employer. Not all potential interns need or desire employment services. By no means do employers or interns have to use employment service professionals. They can reach out to the regional center and navigate the program independently without the above stated supports. PIP interns can learn and develop skills from working professionals in a field that interests them. Another advantage of PIP is that it provides payroll support for interns through regional center funding. This ensures that interns will be wage earners during the length of their internship. This allows interns to begin to meet their financial goals without first securing employment. With so many unpaid internships out there, this is a real advantage for regional center consumers looking to engage in employment. Employers gain a human resource that can assist and support tasks. Interns take on some responsibilities independently and complete projects as needed in ways similar to traditional employees. Because the regional center funds the paid internship program, if an employer decides to engage in this internship opportunity, they will pay zero payroll cost during the length of the internship. All payroll is handled by an outside service. The goal of PIP is to support the employer with a low-risk opportunity to try out an individual in an internship with the hopes that they will then be offered a permanent position, or that employers will consider creating an internship program to assist multiple individuals gain relevant skills to help ensure long-term success with other employers after completing an internship. The regional center is willing to fund these internships with these hopes in mind. People deserve a chance to use their skills. Inclusion is not going to just positively impact an intern's experience, but your organization as a whole. An inclusive environment tends to be more open, accepting, and when people feel heard, they feel valued, and that benefits the bottom line. Many individuals joining the workforce have a limited understanding of the processes related to employment. This can be everything from interviewing and onboarding to navigating conflict, working as a team, and/or time management. Internships are one way to increase exposure and understanding of these processes. This understanding will increase confidence to take on this and other new experiences and responsibilities moving forward. Employers benefit from an increase in productivity and project completion as an intern becomes more comfortable, confident, and better acclimated to the work culture and their responsibilities. Regional Center PIP offers payroll and benefits for interns that will increase financial literacy, process exposure, and give interns real-world experience that they can apply to their careers. Long-term benefits of PIP include an increase in transferable skill knowledge, primarily related to soft skills and general skill development related to things found at most jobs. These are skills that can be built upon and will open up doors to individuals that may not have been opened otherwise. Paid internship program funded through the regional centers provides the opportunity to access professionals, projects, and experiences that may not be found in educational or other program settings. Paid internships give individuals the opportunity to reach financial goals and better understand ways that they can plan for their future based on current and future income. In all hopes, an employer will do one of two things: offer permanent employment to the intern, which will mean that they have a well-trained and supported employee that already knows the ins and outs of the company, or with an increased understanding of multiple training strategies, an employer has the possibility for an internship program that can help support multiple individuals as they enter into the workforce. Long-term employment is not the only possible outcome. Employers can also consider adding an internship program for individuals to gain skills and possible professional references and experiences. Regardless of the outcome, both interns and employers will gain valuable knowledge around how to support and be supported in the workplace in order to bring out the best in everyone. If there is anyone listening that wishes to engage in an internship, first figure out a few things, primarily what type of work you want to do and when you want to do it. If you feel able to take the necessary steps to reach out to employers to set up an internship independently, then feel free to do so. Funding is available through your regional center and can be discussed with your social worker. Don't let anyone stop you. There are many ways to achieve your dreams and support to help you get there. You don't need any special skills, just a willingness to try and work hard. Employers, you should determine what types of duties or jobs that you have available for interns, the preferred schedule for interns, and if there is currently anyone available to assist interns with training and accommodations. Employers should also consider if they feel it would be best to bring in an employment services professional, such as myself, in order to assist them with setting up accommodations and providing support during the implementation and life of the internship. Both interns and employers should reach out to either a regional center or an employment services provider that utilizes PIP and ask about next steps. I hope this helps you better understand how PIP and employment services can be used both by interns and employers. Thank you so much for your time, and I'm available to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Stephanie, for this wonderful presentation. I truly love the PIP program, and I myself personally try to use it as much as I can. So for the next speaker, I'd like to introduce Brendan Anderson. Brendan is the Operations Director Journeyman WGP at California Workforce Association.
Good morning, and thank you, Mark. Bear with us just a couple minutes. Well, maybe not even minutes. All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Brandon Anderson. I am the Operations Director with the California Workforce Association, and it's my pleasure to present for you today this brief presentation titled Supports for Small Businesses, Neurodiverse Individuals, and the Public Workforce System. Mark, go ahead and move on to the next slide. Just a little bit of context setting for you. The public workforce system is funded under the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, or WIOA. WIOA is landmark legislation that, oh, go ahead and go back one slide, Mark. Thank you. Is landmark legislation designed to strengthen and improve our nation's public workforce system and help get Americans into high quality jobs and careers, and to help employers hire and retain skilled workers. The remainder of this slide really describes how that system is funded federally. Those funds are filtered down to the state and then administered at the local level through the local workforce development boards, 45 of which are in California, and their network of America's Job Centers of California, where services are publicly available. Go ahead and move on to the next slide, Mark. Under WIOA, all services are required to be universally accessible. WIOA Section 188 requires that services be fully accessible and offer necessary accommodations to provide to job seekers with disabilities so that they can effectively and meaningfully participate in the programs provided by the job centers and the workforce boards. It guides physical and programmatic access to Title WIOA services and basically requires that states adhere to the tenets of ADA. It also allows for states to define additional accessibility requirements within their own states and local systems as well. Go ahead and move on to the next slide, Mark. Our system, the public workforce system under Title I, is a dual customer system. The local workforce development boards or local boards and their AJCCs, the America's Job Centers, assist job seekers in connecting individuals with the most significant barriers to employment with training resources, as well as wraparound supports and supportive services needed to obtain and retain gainful employment or complete training programs. And they connect employers with qualified talent and individuals to meet industry needs. There are resources available for small businesses and entrepreneurs to design and implement incumbent worker training, access to wage subsidies, the WOTC program as alluded to earlier in Dr. Fung's presentation, as well as employer of record and payroll services. General services through the workforce system are available through the CalJobs system. That's www.caljobs.ca.gov. Go ahead and move us to the next slide, Mark. I'm going to go briefly through these two slides. It just goes into a little bit more detail what services are available specific to businesses as well as job seekers, but I'd like to get us into some of the specific disability initiatives in the system. The local boards and their business services representatives work with local employers and businesses to hire new employees or search for ways to retain, to train or retain their existing workforce. Primary services include recruitment, access to LMI or labor market information, wage subsidies, workshops, layoff aversion strategies, and rapid response programs for employers who might be experiencing layoffs. Go ahead and move to the next slide, Mark. For job seekers in the America's Job Centers of California, they help individuals with career and skills assessments, pre-employment skills workshops, which are free, vocational skills training, and access to funding to pay for that training, as well as connection to community resources and supportive services that would help individuals in training programs successfully complete those programs. Following any training or service plan for individuals at the job centers are placement and retention services. So we'll get you connected with a job and help make sure that you're maintaining that job and retaining that job for up to 12 months following that placement. Go ahead and move us to the next slide, Mark, and this will be the meat of my presentation here. A few ongoing initiatives in the public workforce system that are particular to individuals with disabilities include the Disability Employment Accelerator, which is a grant initiative funded by the Employment Development Department and makes available governors' discretionary funds under WIOA for local boards to implement programs that connect people with disabilities, including college students who are close to fulfilling their degree requirements, particularly in career technical education, working toward or having obtained a recognized post-secondary credential with meaningful career opportunities in that career. A few other initiatives in the public workforce system are also targeted to provide funding to organizations that provide services to specific populations called out under WIOA. One of these populations is persons with disabilities, including those with IDDD. These initiatives entail employment pilot projects under the English Language Learner co-enrollment pilots under the Labor Agency, the Workforce Accelerator Fund from the California Workforce Development Board, and the Breaking Barriers to Employment Initiative also under the State Board, California Workforce Development Board. Go ahead and bring us to our next slide, Mark. One of the most exciting initiatives that's underway right now in the public workforce system as it relates to neurodiversity in the workplace is the Meristem Transformative Autism Program, which is an employer training manual and set of training modules that is intended to dispel the myths of hiring and training and retaining individuals with autism. It was brought about by Senate Bill 866, Breaking Barriers in Employment for Adults with Autism, and was developed from the point of view of youth that had been through work experience or employment themselves. So it's a very unique product. Go ahead and move us to the next slide, Mark. This is important, and this is important training, as we know. I'm sorry, let me back up. Meristem training, Meristem TAP training is easy and free and very important. As we know, every year 50,000 students with autism graduate from high school, and most of these young people remain unemployed or are in part-time minimum wage jobs well into their 20s. While there are programs to help this population prepare for a career, California employers do not have the tools necessarily to hire, train, and retain this untapped and valuable group of employees. The Meristem TAP training was brought about just for that purpose, to meet that exact need. Go ahead and bring us to the next slide. The Meristem TAP training is free. It's available to any employer looking to participate, and is available at tapautism.org. Training is virtual and supported with a comprehensive manual, and any employer that's looking to go through a training has access to follow up with a Meristem representative, in hopes of maybe implementing their own autism or diversity and inclusion hiring programs, or maybe assessing their own existing programs. The Meristem TAP training entails 2 hours of training total, which is administered in 5 easy to digest modules, each around 20 to 25 minutes. Shameless, shameless, shameless plug. We are looking for interested employers to participate in the Meristem TAP training. If interested or know any business owners who might be, please visit or forward along the Meristem TAP training website, tapautism.org. Go ahead and move us to the next slide, Mark. I'm going to end my presentation with a series of supports and resources that are available at the state and federal levels in California for individuals with disabilities. Outside of my Title I We Owe a World, the first and primary partner in this effort at the state level, of course, is the WIOA Title IV provider, Vocational Rehabilitation, which in California is the Department of Rehabilitation. Under WIOA Title II, the Adult Ed program, California Adult Education Program, for K-12 and those entering college in particular, are access to referrals, access to referrals to programs such as Workability 1 and 2. As we just heard, the regional centers run the paid internship program, which is one of the best resources for this population. Go ahead and move us to the next slide, Mark. This slide of supports is really geared toward employment and vocational resources at your community college offices. Most will have a DSPS office, the Disabled Students Program and Services Office, to provide access to programs like Workability 3 and College to Career. The Ticket to Work program under the Social Security Administration is administered by various local vendors that provide training or employment services, and allows for SSI or SSDI, Social Security benefits recipients, to protect their medical and cash benefits if they would like to try working or to get into a vocational training program. The LEAP program for state employment is an alternative testing and an interviewing process for state jobs. Recent expansion, a couple key things here. There was a recent expansion of state classifications eligible for LEAP, so there's a lot more jobs now available for the LEAP program if you have not seen. And a neat benefit to SB 866 that brought about the Meristem TAP training also established some key changes to the LEAP program, which would change the permanent status definition of an employee to now include those appointed to the position after completing the probationary period under LEAP, and would require the individuals referred to hiring managers through LEAP be included in the same applicant pool or list as other eligible applicants, which had not been the case till very recently. Next slide, Mark. Final set of resources for you and some underutilized programs. The CalFresh ENT Employment and Training Program. In June 2019, supportive services and training resources under the SNAP program was expanded for recipients of SSI and SSDI to be eligible. The Medi-Cal Working Disabled program allows for certain working disabled individuals to become eligible for Medi-Cal based on their net countable income. And the CSBG funding available through the community action agencies provides funds to alleviate causes and conditions of poverty in local communities more broadly. That wraps up my set of state and federal resources for us. And if we go to our last slide here, Mark, it'll just be the thank you for your time slide. Again, if you would like any information on the Meristem TAP employer training, we are looking for employers to test this training, implement programs. Visit tapautism.org. My contact information is available here, as well as the as well as the CWA website. And I'm happy to take any questions with time that may be available at the end of this presentation.
Thank you, Brandon, for this very informative presentation. We're gonna move along to our next presenter. Give me 1 second. And attendees, please, if you have questions for a specific speaker, please write their name so we're able to answer those questions. Thank you. 1 second. So our next presenter is Jerry DiTillo. Jerry is the co-director of Jobs Plus Employment and Vocational Services at Caminar. One second.
Hello, everyone. Just
Once I'm getting the
slides. Okay. Wanted to break the silence there for a second.
go ahead.
Again, hello, everyone. Dang, I'm muted. So next slide, please. So a little bit about my background. Hopefully everyone can hear me. I'm the co-director of Caminar Jobs Plus. Jobs Plus is a program that provides individualized training and assistance and support to consumers with disabilities to be successful in competitive employment. I have 23 years of experience working with and helping neurodivergent individuals and those with other disabilities secure and maintain employment. Next slide, please. A little bit about Caminar Jobs Plus. Caminar Jobs Plus was founded in 1964. We are CARF accredited. We're a nonprofit organization that helps more than 20,000 people each year in Solano counties, Santa Clara County, San Mateo County, San Francisco, and Butte counties find jobs and a host of other services. We're a high fidelity program focusing on best practices and integrated treatment for a wide range, as mentioned, of disorders. We work to meet intermediate and long-term goals of the clients. We place clients in many different areas and depends largely on client preference, education, and background skill set. They've been placed at such places as Menlo College, the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs, Bon Appetit, Salesforce, the Ritz-Carlton, the San Francisco Library, Amazon, San Jose Department of Recreation, and of course, Stanford University. Next slide, please. So some laws that are protecting those with neurodivergent conditions, as mentioned by previous speakers, the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 prohibits discrimination in employment, mandates federal agencies to provide technology for those with disabilities to perform their work. The Americans Disabilities Act, which was originally 1990 and then amended in 2008, prohibits unjust termination and retaliation for employers in response to employees asserting their rights. Government entities must make all resources available to individuals, and disability status cannot be used as reasoning for not hiring a person. Next slide, please. So more laws, as mentioned before, WIOA, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunities Acts. No federal funding will be provided to programs that unfortunately have discrimination. One-stop systems must be set up to provide case management, housing, and employment opportunities for those with neurodivergent conditions. Next slide, please. So how someone receives supported employment services. So largely, we pull from a pool of applicants that are provided through the Department of Rehabilitation. They are notified by a client either coming in and asking for services, or someone is referred to them. Then the client chooses a vendor such as Jobs Plus, and then the vendor, Jobs Plus in this case, would perform an intake, employment prep, and job development. Next slide, please. So the current standard for the IPS model, individual placement and support, IPS model, client choice, as mentioned before, is the most important part. As I mentioned, it is based on their skills and abilities and then what the market will bear at that particular time. We believe in rapid job search, which means that we are going to initiate outreach to employers as soon as possible, prepare the clients for those meetings. And we are always searching for a competitive wage, and then we provide job support. So as you can see in the picture, there is a sheltered workshop, which is obviously outdated. And society as a whole wants to move away, in my experience, from this type of sub-minimum wage. It's not competitive work, and they also come with few benefits. Next slide, please. So our services through supported employment, applicant preparation for competitive jobs. We'll tailor a resume to meet the needs, highlighting the skills and abilities of the client for the employer. We'll solicit information about job openings and interviews from employers by our job developers going directly to the employers and talking to them about their past experiences, either with supported employment or making sure that if they haven't had experience with supported employment, that we can help them understand that process. We vet the client's experience and preparation for jobs they apply for. We simulate job interviews for the clients. We either videotape them to make them give them a better understanding about the way they're being perceived and viewed when they interview. And then also going through the mock interview process, asking some of those difficult questions, such as why you might have a gap in employment, or why indeed you want to work for this particular employer, which is one of the most important. Another nice thing that's provided by the Department of Rehabilitation is the funds so we can secure appropriate interview attire. When you feel good, you look good. And with all the other things that precede the interview, we put the person in the best chance to succeed. Next slide, please. Okay, so job coaching. A lot of people are curious about job coaching. We either do it on or off site. It largely depends on one of two things, either the client's choice to have it on or off site, or how we can work with the employer to ensure that either one works best for client success. So what it is essentially is training above and beyond what the employer might already provide. We try to establish relationships with coworkers for potential mentorship and natural job supports. I'll talk about that a little later. Building a relationship between the client and the employer is key. We want to empower the client to seek additional training and opportunity for advancement of their own volition, and we want to instill a certain level of confidence through the coaching. Transition the client to working more independent gradually throughout the first 90 days of the job, and then our service fades out, and depending on which funding source, it can go on indefinitely, or it can go sort of intermittently as the person needs. Next slide, please. So placement and sustained employment success. Caminar is an industry leader in successful employment outcomes. A vast majority of clients coming to Caminar are placed within the job within 90 days of coming to intake. And a high percentage of those people will last at least 90 days and then much further on, of course. Caminar prides itself on working directly with the employer and coach to create a triangle, if you will, with the client to ensure success. Next slide, please. Long-term supports. There are 21 regional centers in California that pick up, often where the Department of Rehabilitation leads off in terms of funding for consistent support throughout the job in most cases. Independent living skills ILS workers are another service that is provided by the regional centers. Of course, job coaching and other support is based on the need and the scope of what the regional center has to offer. Next slide, please. So benefits with working with neurodiverse populations, right? So tapping into a network of potential employees that have been vetted for specific employers based on that person's skills, abilities, and education, as I mentioned. Providing jobs not only benefits the employer with a qualified candidate, but also society as a whole. That was mentioned earlier. There are certainly economic contributions because of employment for the community. Increased diversity in the workforce, as mentioned previously, is good for the workforce as a whole and companies as a whole. Integrates the neurodiverse into society and gives a sense of community to both the employer and the employee. That last statement cannot be overstated. Tax incentives, as mentioned a couple times, there is a work tax opportunity credit up to $9,000 to hire those on the autism spectrum and other disabilities. Barrier removal credit, which is $15,000 a year for qualified expenses, and disabled access credit for companies that are making less than $1 million a year total revenue. Next slide, please. So innovations by leading companies to increase work with neurodivergent populations. As mentioned before, a couple of them. So some of them, SAP, Microsoft, MP Morgan, Hewlett Packard, Freddie Mac, Ernst & Young. So they are working very hard to target recruitment of those on the autism spectrum and adjusting the traditional interview process to better match the candidates. The autism internship programs, custom onboarding process, taking initiative in providing accommodations, changing company culture to welcome and retain those on the autism spectrum, creating a company-sponsored buddy system. As I talked before, natural supports. Job coaches work very hard to ensure that there is inclusion and then a support system once coaching fades out or it decreases to a point where there is a huge amount of hours worked by the client that is not paid for in terms of coaching coverage. So building a buddy system is super important. It's great that these companies are willing to really sort of grab onto that and make it part of their own. Next slide, please. So supports from Stanford to increase companies' work with neurodivergent populations. Obviously, the Stanford Neurodiversity at Work program, the Neurodiversity Job Bank, which is a job match with a large pool of candidates, much like the Department of Rehab provides to companies like Caminar Jobs Plus. Next slide, please. So for more information, feel free to reach out to Caminar about any questions about a whole gamut of disabilities, including for the neurodiverse. Stanford, of course, or you can email me directly at jerryd@caminar.org. And then for more information, you can reach out to our executive director who has many years of experience, Michael Shockett at michaels@caminar.org, or if you're further north, San Francisco Jobs Plus at caminar.org. So next slide, please. Again, my references. Thank you so much, and I look forward to listening to the rest and fielding some questions.
Thank you, Jerry, so much for your presentation and talking about employment services with your company. We'll be moving along. Oops. Our next presenter, I would like to welcome back Dr. Fang, who is the director of Stanford Neurodiversity Project. Thank you, Dr. Fang.
Thank you, Mark. I'm going to talk about the strength-based model of neurodiversity and how it's applied to small business in the neurodiversity at work initiatives. So there are four major components of the strength-based model. The first is positive psychology. Second is positive psychiatry. The third is Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences. And the fourth is Chickering's 7 vectors of development. I'll talk about that in a little bit in more detail. We consider neurodiverse conditions as conditions rather than disorders. And we acknowledge challenges instead of deficits, because a lot of the characteristics of the neurodiverse individuals can actually be spinned as both challenges and strengths. It depends on the context. I'll explain more in my presentation tomorrow at 6 o'clock in the mental health session. And we want to apply strength-based model across the entire spectrum of neurodiverse conditions. Positive psychology was initially started by these two psychologists, Martin Seligman and Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, and they basically proposed that positive psychology's core are well-being, contentment, satisfaction. Flow basically is the immersing oneself in an activity and get satisfaction out of it. And the other cores are happiness, hope, and optimism. So basically, when we are thinking about positive psychology, we can think about how to develop someone to be a more positive, with a lot of the positive attributes of that person. And positive psychology over the last 20 years have 53 published definitions, but basically to summarize this slide is really about strength, interest, and growth or development. Traditional psychiatry and positive psychiatry are contrasted here. Positive psychiatry is really about positive attributes instead of pathology and risk factors. We focus on protective factors and neuroplasticity. Traditional psychiatry focus on treatments by relieving symptoms through medications and short-term psychotherapies. But positive psychiatry is really about increasing well-being and growth through psychoeducational interventions, which can last for a lifespan, entire lifespan, and thus this is more preventative measure. 7 vectors of development include developing competence, managing emotions, moving through autonomy toward interdependence, developing mature interpersonal relationships, establishing identity, developing purpose, and developing integrity. When we are looking at these 7 vectors, we ask 3 questions. How do we help neurodiverse individuals to achieve these developmental milestones? And the second question is, how do the people around them that can change the environment do anything to help the neurodiverse individuals to achieve these developmental tasks? And the third is, what about the mental health providers? What can they do? The fourth component of the strength-based model is the theory of multiple intelligences. So unlike the IQ tests that include only verbal linguistics, logical, mathematical, and visual spatial domains, there are other domains like musical, rhythmic, bodily, kinesthetic, naturalistic. Interpersonal is basically the ability to relate with others. Intrapersonal is the ability to understand self, and existential. So when we are thinking about human abilities, if we are going to go beyond what we are typically thinking about, we can actually discover a lot more strengths of people. So when we are applying the strength-based model to neurodiverse individuals, we focus on how to raise awareness of their personal strengths, increase their trust in personal abilities, and help them learn to engage in relationships, as well as increasing their self-satisfaction through success. If we are able to do that in an effective way, then we can move neurodiverse individuals away from negativity and immobility, such as the comorbid conditions, anxiety, depression, and executive function dysfunction. So how about the small businesses? Froman, about 10 years ago, published this paper on positive psychology at the workplace. And I think this is really the biggest contribution on how we can view positive psychology to be applied to businesses. So basically, what we want to make the workplace better is to really infuse strengths, virtues, and self-determination, just like Dr. Wiemeyer was talking about, in order to really get people to understand that they can actually make things happen despite that there are a lot of things that you cannot control. So the second is about the workplace having people to understand, not neurodiverse and neurotypical people alike, to understand how to really communicate with each other better. And when we are able to do that, when we are able to actually understand other people better, neurodiverse people and neurotypical people, if we are all able to try to understand each other better, then we can increase the emotional intelligence in the workplace. And a lot of the things that are happening in the workplace has more than just the cut and dry, you do the work or not. There is actually a lot of interactions and a lot of the psychological capital that can be gained. And this is hidden curriculum. And a lot of the time, there is not really a whole lot of explanation for neurodiverse individuals. But if we are very, very deliberate in trying to bring them in, we can actually make them understand how to really develop that psychological capital. So this is going to be helpful to give the organization to have good, positive organizational behavior. And because of the better functioning, the morale would be better in the teams. There's going to be more innovation because there's going to be more ability for people that are having their own unique opinions to be verbalized and be translated into innovation. And that can lead to great change for the good for the organization. And one thing that sometimes we would want to consider is that a virtuous organization that can foster a sense of meaning for all the people in the workplace can really get the organization to be a stronger organization. So again, I bring you to this neurodiversity initiatives kind of core is the ecosystem model. So when we are thinking about how to really build a stronger organization with neurodiverse initiatives, we have to think about all the people that are involved in this ecosystem. When we are able to do that, we are going to be able to understand exactly how we can actually make good change for the workplace. So if you are a supervisor or an executive, you may be able to actually make a lot of the changes because you can call shots. And because for small businesses, you are more agile. If you are willing to accept neurodiversity, that can actually really distribute, get your ideas distributed to the rest of the organization very quickly. So I'm going to, for the sake of time, I'm going to just tell you that we have the Neurodiversity at Work program that are helping companies to understand how to build neurodiversity-friendly workplaces. And in addition to helping neurodiverse individuals in the entire employment cycle, we also help employers in the entire employment cycle. And each of the neurodiverse individual would have two support circles. One is the workplace support circle, the other is personal life support circle. And we deliberately make a lot of the connections and support for the neurodiverse individuals and also the employers in order to collectively make the workplace truly neurodiversity friendly. With that, I'm going to end this presentation, and let's go to the Q&A session.
Thank you, Dr. Fang. I would like to thank all the speakers for the thoughtful and informative presentations. Now I'll turn the tables to Doc Meeker. Doc will continue with a Q&A until 10:55 a.m. Go ahead, Doug.
Thank you, Mark. We've got a lot of questions, so I'm just going to, in a limited amount of time. So one, I just asked that Brendan and Jerry and Stephanie, if you're still out there, if you could take yourself off mute so that we're ready for this. One of the questions, which I think is really important, is just around internships. And the question was, can you speak more about how interns are connected to employers, the best way to go about contacting a potential employer regarding an internship, and how employers are educated about the possible benefits? So how do we get more employers to buy into creating an internship program? And Stephanie, are you on with us?
Yeah, I am. I'm currently traveling, but I'm here.
Okay, all right, you're masked up, ready to go.
I am always. Stay safe, right? Honestly, I think one of the biggest barriers to participation in employment generally in the neurodivergent community is outreach. And so I truly think that the way that we reach employers is just by talking to them, and either by having a job developer like myself go in and have that conversation, or even tapping businesses that you might have a relationship with. I've had real success with that. And so truly, I think that the paid internship program specifically is a great route to yes. I think the thing we need to do is just make sure employers are aware about it. And it's honestly, it's a cold calling, reaching out to your networks, and then possibly reaching out to employment specialists such as myself and others on this webinar to assist with that as well.
Got it. Brendan, anything to add?
I can't agree more. It's critical to, especially for any population that experiences significant barriers to access. A significant way in is through these employment specialists, business service representatives, and the like, especially where there might be an existing IEP, and maybe that IEP may not be aligned to employment. It may be a good time now to go to your serving organizations and say, hey, I've got an individual who we did this plan, but now we'd really like to look at employment. Where do we need to start? And really start that conversation.
Gotcha. Jerry, anything to add to that? I think what people are looking for is, hey, is there some secret, not a secret sauce, but some key elements that you've all been able to use in the past to get employers on board with creating these internships?
Yeah, I would say most importantly is networking, and then hiring the right people who aren't afraid to walk through doors and talk to people, get past the gatekeepers, find out who the key hiring managers are, and really present a like a host of benefits for hiring people from this particular population. And then of course the follow along, ensuring that the person who promises makes sure that all the things promises are delivered on, and that creates word of mouth and of course more opportunity.
Got it. So Jerry, while we're picking on you, we had a question that came in that says, why not give job coaches to everyone and tailor the recruitment process to best practices for everyone instead of siloing people on the spectrum into one program that would benefit many, such as individuals with learning disabilities, PTSDs, et cetera? Is there any talk of this?
Okay, that's a lot. So
I know, sorry.
I'll try to break that one down a little bit for you. So like I alluded to in my presentation, everything is about client choice. And for our end, we always try to hire job developers that are open to learning about different and diverse populations, right? Regardless of disability, and then sending them out well fortified to represent those people from each particular disability, for lack of a better way of putting it.
Got it. Got it. And Jerry, there was another question here, again, picking on you because you're the easiest one on my spreadsheet right at the moment.
Okay.
What are the hiring statistics for neurodiverse employees at some of the companies that have been listed?
I read that question. Yeah, I read some of the questions. So I'm sorry to say that I wouldn't have that information. That would be sort of information that the employer themselves would have, and I would think that would be somewhat proprietary to that particular organization. So I'm not sure. I just know that the ones that I listed are open and have a lot of information about what they do. And of course, we ourselves have had people at other companies such as Salesforce. There's a long list of major employers that are interested in working with a neurodivergent population.
Got it. So Dr. Fung, a question for you. In addition to the small and medium-sized businesses as a source of jobs for the neurodiverse, what do you think about universities and colleges as employers for this same population, in particular public universities that might have a mandate?
Yeah, that's a great question. And at Stanford, we are exactly doing that. We have already started hiring people on the spectrum on campus. So there are others that are doing the same, like Rutgers is doing this, Drexel is doing this, and University of Maryland is doing this. So this is not new. We are really trying to tell more people that we are doing it. And definitely there are every week, almost, I get some question about what we are doing at Stanford, and definitely we're spreading the word.
Got it. And I think this is a question. I believe this is really for the group that ask. The question is, how do we balance hope and blame? Do you feel there is enough acknowledgement of the realities of disablement and marginalization in the neurodiverse movement, or is there too much? Can we as a community come to accept that our experiences are diverse, and what one person experiences as helpful, others may experience as a reproach? Let's start with you, Jerry, since I'm picking on you. Can you give me an initial response to that?
I don't think there is enough. I think the more word that we get out there and the more people that are willing to walk through doors, and I think you'd be shocked at how many people, even though they have people within their own families with disabilities, don't understand the scope of what's possible. So I think getting the information out there and making yourself known and, touting, some past success that you've had with other companies, of course, remembering HIPAA, but certainly, for lack of a better word, just really highlighting all the great accomplishments that people have already achieved and that what can come in the future.
Brandon, anything to add to that?
No, one of the trends I've seen in our public workforce system is a push toward competitive integrated employment, which is a critical effort, obviously. But one of the things I think we see, speaking to kind of the marginalization issues of access, is once you start pushing things like CIE, a certain portion or segment of the population then also gets left behind, and there's less access to employment supports like sheltered employment or supported employment resources, which are still critical in these programs. And so the critical crux here is the nature of a partnership between workforce service providers, and maybe a connection to something like the regional center between providers can help maybe kind of ease some of these issues of marginalization, where there are more human-centered approaches to service delivery versus programmatic barriers to success.
Got it. So I think we're going to have to wrap up. I just want to add one personal note, in that I have an 18-year-old on the spectrum, and he has just started an apprenticeship with a farm here. And just the idea of him learning what work is, you know, there's a time card, there are job tasks, all of those things are so badly needed as a first step. And I think if we can find more ways to create these types of internship and apprenticeship programs for this population, that's really going to set the table for how they're going to grow downstream. And I'm seeing it firsthand, trust me. So in any event, I want to thank all of the participants. There are some other questions. I'm sorry we weren't able to get to them, but we'll do our best to answer them one-on-one. Mark?
Thank you, everyone, for the speakers, and Doug. It's been a really nice, meaningful session. With that, we're going to take a 5-minute break until 11 o'clock, and we're very excited about our next keynote speaker, Sarah Rankin. We'll see you all soon.